You've probably heard me say that actually doing an organizing job is all very personalized to your style, how you prefer to work, and obviously the client's project because everybody's got different stuff. One of the biggest keys to being successful is knowing how to competently serve them the first time you show up so that they can immediately feel the difference and see the value of your work together. Whether this is your first client or whether this is your 50th client, every single job is going to feel like you're starting over again just a little bit, since you do have to learn a little something new every time.
You're listening to the Pro Organizer Studio podcast with Jen Obermeyer. Thank you for joining in. Jen makes it her mission to broaden the horizons of savvy businesswomen in the organizing industry by instilling confidence and inspiring authenticity. She is a devoted business coach and founder of the Inspired Organizer program. Each week, you'll gain new insight into strategies designed specifically for professional organizers. And now, let's get started.
Hi, friends. So, I'm going to go into teaching mode a little bit for this episode. Even if you are not literally looking for guidance on serving your first ever client anymore, I just want to reassure you that you're in the right place to listen to this podcast today if you ever have anxiety about starting with a new person. You're simply not going to come across every possible scenario until you have probably been working with hundreds and hundreds of clients. So you're going to feel as if each person is your first client all over again for that reason. If you know that in advance, though, then you don't have to beat yourself up about saying, oh, I didn't know this thing off the top of my head right on the spot like that. It's okay. So here's the major takeaway right up front. The client gives you the map of how to competently serve them, but you have to be able to recognize it and you have to know how to elicit what is important to them. Write that one down. It's a cornerstone of what I teach in my program, Inspired Organizer. Competently serving your very first client actually starts way before you show up at that first session. When they first are connecting with you on that very first phone call, you are trying to gather information on multiple levels. You're listening for what are their pain points, what is important to them. Now, even when you work within a certain niche, say you work with lots of working couples, they might still all have a little bit different perspective. It's especially important in that example when you have two individual stakeholders. You're really trying to solve the problem for both sides of the couple instead of just working with one person. So sometimes you're thinking, okay, how can I make this work? And you're doing a little bit of unofficial relationship counseling along the way, and you have to uncover those needs. And that's why it's at the very heart of what Inspired Organizer means to me is that you're not just simply going through a consultation like an assessment, taking notes on, okay, how big is your house? How full are the rooms? How many hours do you have to work with me? You're not just gathering the facts of the situation. You're taking in all of that, plus asking, what is the importance and why now? What is the problem that I'm really solving here? So let's use that working couple as an example, okay? I think that when you're serving people such as working couples, that problem that you're really solving comes down to the quality of home function so that the relationship is functioning well. And so that the families are enjoying their time together instead of trying to each find their own separate spaces amongst all the chaos because there's never really any time to slow down and figure out how each piece is going to work for each person. So those are the things that you want to listen for even on that first initial phone call. If you know that real problem, I promise you that you will be, this is not scientific, but I feel that it's 85 to 90% of the battle is being crystal clear on what is important to them. Because if you don't know that real problem, you can show up and be a great organizer and work like a high-speed tornado to get things done, and then they're just feeling like, oh, okay, wow, you did a lot, but you weren't really seeing them. You're not a therapist, but you've got to understand the people that actually live in the home. So all that pre-work is a big part of it. Having that trust established with them that you're really non judgmental, that you are really going to listen to both sides. Establishing that trust with them, even on the first part of the first phone call, is a big part of all of the things that I say about making the sale in the first place. You're not just giving them a quote like, okay, let's do an assessment of how junky your house is, and I'll come in and do it in 10 hours. It's much, much more than that. It's, okay, let's talk about you as a person. So in that phone call, you get some pieces of the map. When you go into the in-home consultation, you're really gathering those milestones that are going to be necessary for this particular job. The how of the consultation and the sale is what I teach inside Inspired Organizer. When you know what to listen for, you'll know, okay, this person needs these things to feel peaceful, and this person needs these things to feel peaceful. You'll know and you'll be able to see and hear where to start. This is important because when you do actually go in for the first actual session of the job, because I know that's the part that you said you've got this mental block about what do I do? You'll know where to start then, because what you want to do in terms of providing immediate value to your client is to work on those things that are the most stressful in their home, because those are going to bring the most relief right away. So using that working family example, let's take the mail and the keys and the groceries and all that stuff. Let's just say that those high traffic areas are causing daily stress. So this is where organizers have their own particular style of handling the items and helping the client make decisions. But know that there's always going to be these phases of first decluttering what is there and processing what's sitting there physically. And then the second part will be, what is it that we want to keep here? And then setting up your designated places for the items to live. Everything's got to have a place, right? So you've got to deal with what's there first. That's the part that I think is probably going to be the most challenging if you're working without the client, because you can process through an area on your own, but you can't be the one to make a decision about what goes. You can still put things in categories though, and that helps them. You got to understand that the value of that is that it still helps them come in and say, oh, this is doable. Instead of them thinking, oh my gosh, there's this mountain of stuff that I am never going to be able to get through on my own. So you've set up, okay, here's one category. Let's work through that. What you want to keep, what you want to throw away. Here's another type, books, magazines, whatever. So then immediately they're already thinking, oh my gosh, I feel better because this mountain of junk is not there anymore. It's that breathing room that gives them small wins and energy for the next part of the project. After sorting, purging, figuring out a place for everything, then you'll be working with them about systems. Again, this is a very personal thing. You've got to know, okay, spouse A, this is their daily schedule. This is what they tend to be responsible for. What does spouse B want, and what do they do, and what are they responsible for? So for example, if one person always does the grocery shopping, here's what I need to have set up for them. And then the other person needs to be on board. By the way, I'm totally making up examples, but I'm actually taking this one from me and my husband because he and I both go grocery shopping separately because we buy different things. So we have our own list making system that works for us because I always buy all of the family meal stuff and he buys more of the everyday staples. So this would be an example where you've got to just ask those questions because we're probably not going to drastically change people's behaviors and have them stick. I think what we've got to do is help them have a home that works for who they already are and what is already working well versus saying, okay, well, Jen, you should just start being responsible for all those staple items so that you guys can save time on grocery shopping. And my husband would be like, nope, not on board. I don't trust her to do that. It just wouldn't work for us. That would be too much of a challenge. And that's where you see systems get implemented by professional organizers that sound great on paper, but don't work for the family unit and don't stick in the long run. So by conducting your consultation and your prep work correctly, you'll know where to start. As the project moves forward, you learn more and more about the people and how to best use their package of hours. My Inspired Organizer program is built around this entire business model for selling these high ticket packages and how to manage those projects on a professional level while still leaving lots of room for the client's individual needs. If there's ever any doubt on your part about, hey, what if I sell a package and it's too much or it's not enough? I know that that's a challenge for some people. You'll be able to say, all right, let's use another example of a home office. Our biggest priority is the home office. Let's say that that's the reason why they call you. So you can know if all they want to do is focus on the home office, fine. But with how I teach package pricing, now they've shown you the rest of the house at the consultation, and you can say something like, with my middle package, we can work on the home office and also manage some of those other things that you guys showed me in the kitchen, the family areas, and what have you. So now you can just go ahead and set expectations that you will prioritize based on what they have told you. Prioritize the area that is the biggest pain point, but that you also want to address some of those other pain points so that you're truly helping them by saying, I don't want to leave you hanging here. I really want to make this functional for you. So that's a reason why pointing them towards your middle package generally gets you a small space plus some other stuff, at least at a bare minimum. You let them know, hey, I can't guarantee exactly how long things take because every project is different and every client is different as far as how quickly they make decisions. Maybe the home office takes up the entire package and you can't get to the other things. That's okay. So here's the thing. Here's my rule of thumb for this. Let's say you're working with a client who really plans on being with you the whole time. They're not planning on leaving you there. They're just saying, okay, I want to work with you for 8 sessions. What you can say is let them know, I'll be able to project better how much we can get done in these 8 sessions after we've worked together a few times because now you have information. This is why even very experienced organizers refuse to quote jobs. You never had any real information about how quickly you'll be able to work together before you start the project because people will tell you stuff that is just not true. Like, oh yeah, I'm quick. I'm very decisive. And then you get in there and they're just like, "Oh, I don't know. This is hard work." You can imagine working with a widow who is going through her husband's stuff is going to be harder to predict and work with than someone who is just a little bit more straightforward in terms of we've got a family, we're busy, we just don't have systems. Please come in and just give us a makeover. But even those simple jobs can have lots of complexities beneath the surface. So you can see why there's so many factors. Going back to that example of working with somebody one-on-one and they want to do 8 sessions, but they're also asking, what do you think we'll be able to get done in this amount of time? And you can say, I will be able to better project that after we've worked together for a few sessions. And the thing is, the first probably session or 2 maybe will go slower because you're learning her house. You don't know where anything is yet. That slows you down as a team. You've got to learn her style and she's got to learn the decision-making process. So you actually get quicker the longer you work together because now you know her house, you know what needs to happen, and you can just jump right in. But it's hard to say that to a client at first, or maybe it's not hard, as long as you're just upfront and say it takes some time to learn what's important to you and where you want things to be. And as we set things up and as we work through some of the you don't want to call it junk, but you know what I mean. As we process through some of the existing challenging spaces, you can say, you might be very surprised how quickly we are working together after a few sessions. But again, other very experienced professional organizers will still say there's no way to give a completely accurate quote. I mean, there's just way too many factors, but you can start to know, okay, with this specific person, here's how long things take. But you still can't necessarily implement that on everybody and say, oh, well, it took 6 hours to do that room with that person, and so it'll take the exact same amount of time. All right. So in this episode already, we walked through the phone consultation, what that tells you, the in-home consultation, what that tells you, and then once you're on the project, you've actually shown up for the job. I know it feels really awkward on your very first time ever, but you literally start by putting your hands on something and starting to pull something out. If you're in a kitchen, let's say they have one of those long counters and it just has stacks of something and you're just looking at it and you're like, all right, I'm a professional organizer. I showed up to do the job 5 minutes ago. This is my first time. What do I do? Put your hands on something and start sorting. And that's the part where I swear to you, this happens with everybody. They're saying, I had never done this before for a client I didn't know already, but something switched on when I went in and I knew what to do. And typically, they're right there with you. So you're excited and you say, let's jump in. You start sorting things out and making piles and making categories and saying, all right, this is a bill. Let's put this here. And they'll start jumping in with you. They're like, oh, yeah, this is that thing. And then they're saying, okay, I know this is important. Let me set it here. And then they'll say, I know that this is for recycling. I'll go get the recycle box. Within minutes, you'll get into a groove. But it's the same thing with any other, like let's say it's a closet or let's say it's a pantry. Always your first thing is you're going to be basically pulling everything out of there. So once you get your hands on things, you will start to connect with your own organizational skills. It'll feel natural. Like, I know this is somebody else's stuff and I barely know them, but now my brain has just turned on and I know what to do. Of course, there are challenges that you can't be prepared for totally. One time, I was working with a woman on part of her garage. She was a gardener and she had a lot of potted plants stored in this garage. I mean, I guess it might be weird to me, but it's not weird to her. She had them all stored in shelves in the garage instead of having them out like where they could be in the sun. She had tons of shelves of these potted plants, and she said to me on the consultation, I need to go through those and see which ones are good and which ones are bad. And so I was looking at it and thinking to myself, I don't know, this should be easy. But anyway, it turns out when I showed up to the job, I was looking at it at the plant and the plant looked dead to me, but she's looking at me in horror like, oh, no, 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 no. She said, don't you know you have to feel inside the soil and check? And I was a little bit mortified because no, I had no idea. But things are going to happen like that where you're looking at stuff and you're thinking, oh, this is easy. This is junk. That's part of the problem with trying to predict a project is you're looking at it going, this is simple. But to them, it's no, you've got to actually check inside the soil of each one and see whether it's still alive. That was just so funny to me because, she couldn't believe that I didn't know. And I was thinking, I can't believe you expected me to know that. So in between a consultation and your first project or the first session or even between sessions, once you're on a job with a client, sometimes you'll see that, okay, before I come back next time, I might need to do a little bit of research on X, Y, or Z. Sometimes I know people get a little nervous about recommending closet systems or products, and I'm telling you, it's okay. Take pictures of the space, leave, and then come home and start Googling or looking on Pinterest. You do not have to know the perfect thing off the top of your head. Or in my example, you don't have to have already had expertise in their particular plant thing, but you have time to get yourself up to date or to look for certain solutions for this particular project before next time. You can come back and say, hey, I've been thinking about this, and here are 3 things I think could potentially work. And then you can show them pictures or you can show them inspiration, and you're asking them, hey, what do you think about this? You're still giving them your professional opinion, but the ball is always in their court because, hey, some people just don't want to spend a lot of money on containers. So that's another thing that I think is very comforting is to know that you can only work on what you're there to work on. So let's go back to that example where you're working through the kitchen counter of piles and stuff. So while you're working through the mail on the counter, they're not going to also be asking you, oh, by the way, what size shelving should I also put in my bathroom? Because that's 7 or 8 steps away and you guys aren't there yet. But if you know that the bathroom is important to them, you can say, that's a great question. Let me take a few pictures before we leave so I can be working on that for you before next time. You do not have to. Nobody expects you to be a walking container store of information of exactly what's going to work best for them instantly. Does that make sense? All right. I know I've just given you a lot, but what are your impressions right now? I think knowing that part about, I know it takes a lot of faith. I know it takes a lot to say, wait, are you sure that my organizing brain is just going to turn on when I get there? But it's true because you're working with physical objects. So there's a structure to everything. You're going to have to pull things out, categorize, see what you've got, get their input. Sometimes they're going to say, I don't want to get rid of a single thing. So you go with that. The client is in charge. In that case, your goal is just to simply categorize, make it look pretty, have it stored appropriately, and then we move on. I mean, you can't impose getting rid of things on them, but usually, obviously, it really helps them feel better if they can get rid of things that are appropriate to get rid of. For somebody who really truly wants to be a professional organizer, you know how to organize and you're competent at that. It's just a matter of getting someone else's input on the importance of the items versus when you do it for yourself, you already know what the importance of the items is. But I would say, and I think that this is what's going to surprise you, it's actually easier to do it for other people than it is even for yourself. Because when you're doing it for yourself, you're thinking of all the to-do list items and reminders and memories that every single thing on that kitchen counter represents, and that is so heavy. That's why people can't do it on their own, because they're just feeling like, oh shit, I'm so behind on all this stuff. I don't want to do this today. But you can do it because it doesn't have any meaning to you other than, okay, this is an electric bill. I'm going to put this in the bills pile. Then we'll get to that part and we'll process that in the context of paying all the bills on time. Next thing, this is a book. Hey, where do books go in your house? You're not thinking, oh God, I didn't read that book and I told my boss I did, or oh, that was a really good book and I meant to give it to my sister. There's just none of that stuff clouding you as the professional. Really, it is therapeutic to the organizer as well as the client. I mean, it feels really good and it's very energizing because you're using your organization skills without having all of your own emotion tied up in it. And so that's why it's so helpful for them, because all of their emotions are tied up in it, but you are the one simplifying the process. So I hope you walk away from this episode today with just so much confidence about what to concretely do with your first paying clients that you have zero excuses left for finally getting out there and putting your talents to work. If you found this helpful, I would love to invite you to attend my free online class called the 4-Part Plan for Landing Your Dream Clients. It is chock full of information about what the most successful professional organizers are doing right now to get more of these big, high-end home organizing projects without wasting time on outdated business stuff that just doesn't work in our industry. I'll also show you the exact framework that I teach in my paid program, Inspired Organizer, so that you can start applying these leading edge strategies in your business right away. Check out the link in the show notes, and I'll see you next time. Are you loving the Pro Organizer Studio podcast? Help us reach new listeners and bring in even more amazing guests by leaving a review for T-Pop through your podcasting app. It truly makes our day to know that you are listening.
Thank you for listening to the Pro Organizer Studio podcast. If you'd like to learn more about time-saving services and resources for professional organizers, visit www.proorganizerstudio.com. And if you'd like to get Jen's roadmap to success for launching and growing your professional organizing business, go straight to www.poroadmap.com.